how many times I start the show off with people. It's going to start off with Biden. It seems like a lot. Here he goes.
The companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump. This is a time of war, global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times.
All right, welcome to GAMcast for July the 5th, 2022. It's a cloudy day. Looks like we might get poured on again like we did yesterday. Hope you had a great 4th of July holiday there as we did. Probably not going to do a lot of 4th of July stuff today. Going to bump it to tomorrow. A lot of people are doing a lot of July 4th today. I'm sure we're going to talk about what President Biden was just talking about with gas prices. He's got a little bit of dispute with Bezos we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about conceptually today. I thought about this, and we've just reached the point where Democrats can no longer be bothered to govern while they steal our money. I mean, for a long time, they sort of played at governing a little bit and stole less of our money. Now it's just in your face, stealing the money, stealing the tax money, giving it to their buddies, and they can't be bothered to govern. And I've got a lot of examples of that today, how they're incapable of governing. The most striking of which is going to be the Highland Park shooting, which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Liz Cheney, Senator Warnock, who's running for senator in Georgia, and a bunch of other things we can get to it. Let's get back to this Biden bit. I'm going to have to start it over and debunk this stuff as we go. But before I do that, I over the weekend, he said that on the 3rd. There's about 5 lies in there that he told, and purposely told. And folks, I'm sorry, they're just lies. Nobody of his age, of his sophistication, can believe those things. He knows darn well why he's doing that, and I'll tell you in a moment why he said it. In addition to the fact that there's something else going on here, not just the typical lying about gasoline. Okay, there's a little bit more going on. I'm going to tell you about that. But before he said that, he got called out by Jeff Bezos in the Washington Post, who said that, of course, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, so where else? But anyway, this is good news because the more people that obviously vote and support Democrats realize what these people are doing, the better off it is for all of us. So Jeff Bezos said that it's either straight misdirection or a deep misunderstanding for Biden to keep talking about his inflation claims. And Bezos is close to right, but like a lot of people, Bezos doesn't really understand what we understand, and that is, again, the Democrat Party has always been about stealing, and it's always been about power, always, from the very beginning of its inception. It's always what it's been about. That's why it was the pro-slavery party. Now it's the party that uses race in a different direction today. But the difference is, back then, they at least they knew while they're stealing our money and taking power and giving it to their friends, they knew that they kind of had to, fix the potholes and pass some rational legislation. You go back to the New Deal, looking back now, the New Deal, a lot of it was a mistake. But, at the time, they were actually giving you something while they were busy enriching their friends and taking power. So, nowadays, Bezos doesn't quite understand that it could be straight misdirection, which is for a purpose. It could also be a deep misunderstanding. Right, or it also, in the case of Biden, could be that he's just reading whatever he's told on the teleprompter. But that doesn't matter because whoever programs the teleprompter certainly knows it. So let's go back to the president and let's start debunking some of these. And then we're gonna cover about 4 or 5 stories that I thought, to me, were interesting to me because, again, it's a slow news day because all they're talking about is this stupid Highland Park shooting, and there's really not much else going on. You're basically all caught up to date because I'll just tell you, we passed a bill couple of weeks ago, and turns out this guy shot people. Shocking. You know what happened in Denmark over the weekend? Shocking. I mean, folks, funny how you can... And the other thing that kills me about this, and I just hate to be this simplistic, but it's true. I mean, I wonder sometimes, again, the Democrats have just gotten where they can't bother to be sane anymore. I mean, you do understand, anytime there's a shooting, you break about 5 or 6 laws. I mean, obviously assault, obviously battery. In the case of people dying, that's murder. You are not allowed to take those types of weapons out in the... I mean, there's all kinds of laws that are out there. But for some reason, in the Democrat mind, one more law would do it. One more law would do it, right? But anyway, so we'll get back to that. But let's get back to Biden before we get to that. And let's start him over. And here's what he's talking about. Now, this is on July the 3rd. So this is before the 4th. And Biden knows a bunch of people are going to get in their car and they're going to buy petrol. And when they buy the petrol, right, they're going to be paying European-style prices. Folks, that's not a coincidence, right? We're headed towards Europe. We've been doing that for a long time. And one of the things you have to understand about Europe is they've been crazy about the carbon stuff, and they've been taxing and carbon taxing fuel for a long time. They've been paying these gas prices over there. That's why when you go over there, they've got a lot stronger mass transit system, which is also related to the fact they're a lot more closer together, and they came about at a time when choo-choos were more abundant. And unfortunately for them, they do, or fortunately, depending on which way you want to look at it, right? I mean, it's fortunate in that you have this great rail system, because at the time that they were formed thousands of years ago, rail was the way to travel. And so people traveled that way a lot. So they already had a pretty good rail system before the automobile came along. America, not so much. America had only been founded about 100 years, and all of a sudden there's a car. And you got a huge country. And so the choo-choo kind of took a back seat to the car. Anyway, I don't have a history lesson today, but there's reasons for that. The point is, they have had the type of policies that we are getting here over there for a long time. They're used to it, we're not. So Biden knows a lot of people are going to be driving this weekend, and they're going to pull into gas stations. Now, folks, you need to know this before I play this again. You do understand that when you drive down the street and you see Exxon, and you see Shell, or you see Conoco, or you see whatever you see, BP, you understand BP doesn't own the service station. Or maybe you don't. I don't know. I've represented a lot of service stations in my career as an attorney, okay? And so I know a little bit about this industry. They don't own that. They basically franchise the name, and they pay a piece of the action for that. That's the way it works. And so a couple of things you need to understand about service stations. So one, 95%+ are independently owned. So you're talking about small business people, okay? I mean, anybody can go, when you go into these things and you deal with them, you know that it's not an executive from one of these companies. But again, maybe people don't know that, so let's set the stage. I want you to also understand they usually make a profit on gas, okay? And here's the thing. It's like P.T. Barnum said, nobody ever went broke making a profit. But you have to understand this. It's a very, very small profit. So depending on which numbers you get, and again, I haven't looked at them in a while, but I remember from my cases the gist. The gist is you make about 15 cents a gallon, right, before expenses. All right? Now, depending on how good you are with your money, the best of them out there can make about 2 cents per gallon, right? That's about it. And if you're not very efficient and you're not very good with your service station, you'll make a little less than 2 cents a gallon. Now, again, to be fair, it's profit, but I don't want you to think nobody's getting rich off that. The way they make their money, okay, and that's why this whole, paying at the pump and all this stuff that's happened over the years has hurt their business. They make money by you coming in and buying a Coke that you can go buy at Publix or Kroger or Food Line or wherever you get your groceries for 50 cents. They charge you $2 for it. That's where their margin is you come in, right? And that's why you notice in these last few years, as people started to pay at the pump more and became more convenient, and you didn't bother to go in there and buy a stick of gum or a Coke or whatever, now they're starting to have these fancy coffee, or sometimes they'll partner with a Subway. That's all designed to get you, while your car's pumping the 2 cents they're making on the gallon or less, into the store. So you got to understand those two things there, right? And then the third thing is basic economics. I want you to understand that, what you purchase for something and what you can sell it for later, I know this audience understands that they're not always the same, right? I've got a lot of things that I paid a lot for that are worthless now, and I got a lot of things I didn't pay much for that are worth a lot. Like, for example, recently I've been looking around at some firearm purchases, and I'm struck by one thing. When I was in law school, I bought an old Russian AK. I just went down one day, a couple of buddies and I wanted to go shooting, and in Florida, they got shooting ranges everywhere. I mean, they're outside, they're fantastic, and they're free. I mean, it's just basically public parks. At least they did it this time. This was in the 90s. And so we just went one day to a gun show, and a couple of us bought them. I think I paid a few $100s for the thing. Thing's worth thousands of dollars now because of all these gun laws. So, again, should I have to sell it for the couple of $100 that I paid for it, 30-odd years ago? That makes no sense. Anyway, you get the idea. Let's listen to the president.
The companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump.
All right, now, first off, I've already told you one. It's not the companies that are doing that. It's independent business people. Okay? And again, folks, here's what you got to understand too. Common sense would tell you this. If the companies were fighting it, you'd have a lot more fighting out there. But you know as well as I do that when you drive down the street, the prices of everybody out there are pretty set. They're pretty competitive. Now, if you happen to be on the right side of the street and you're going, like I do, and you're heading north into Buckhead, it's always cheaper than it is on the left side of the street. Right? Because that's the way they're playing for the traffic, right? But it's never more than a couple of cents. If it was companies, they'd be having an outright price war. small business people, they don't have enough margin there to have a price war. That's the whole point. If they did, you'd see more of it. So he's now making, I want you to look, and I want you to blame BP, Gulf, Exxon, etc., because they're bad people, right? But again, this, if you've been listening to this show, or you know your politics well enough, you know that Democrats hate a lot of things, and one of the things they hate are small business people. So that shouldn't surprise you that he's basically going to call out the small business people, but make you think it's the companies. I mean, this is just awful.
This is a time of war.
Okay, it's not a time of war. It's not. I mean, by that rationale, it's a time of war every time there's a stupid conflict in the world, which would, guess what, be the rest of our flipping lives. There's no conflict out there. We're certainly not involved in a conflict, but for the fact that the West wants to be in it. And why does the West want to be in it? Because the West is no longer, again, and it's not just the Democrat Party, but the West is no longer interested in governing. They just aren't. I mean, they've always been about, I mean, look, in the old days, people went to Washington. Some people went for good reasons to serve. I'm not saying that a lot didn't. But back then, you had people that voted, and you needed to produce. So you had to produce back then. But as more and more you could get elected on impugning the other side, and we're going to get to Liz Cheney and her talking about the greatest threat we're facing, which is like made up. The more you can do that, the more you don't need to bother with actually governing. And so the original deal was you could go in there, and instead of doing a job like the rest of us do on a daily basis, you had to go in there and do actually governing work, right? And then in exchange for that, you kind of got to live a cool life, and then you had a lot of power, and you went to a lot of dinners and stuff. I mean, that's kind of the attraction of the whole politic thing, setting aside if you really want to do something, and I think some people do. Biden doesn't. Biden doesn't care about anything right now, and it's pretty obvious to anybody. He just wants to be the president of the United States, and when he was vice president, it was basically to make money for his son. And again, because the media is too stupid to know this, they get away with it. But anyway, he continues.
Global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times.
Okay, again, I'm sorry about Ukraine, and I've said this 1,000 times. I really don't need to say it anymore to you folks. Ukraine's a hoax, but even if you don't think it's a hoax, let's take it for what they say it is. Some small country over there in the East, in Eastern Europe, is having a conflict with Russia. And let's also believe the false flags, which I know they're false flags, but let's assume for the sake of the argument, you're a Democrat and you assume that Russia is going in to people right across the border, right? So they're going into these people right across the border and they're harming these people to try to get them to surrender. Okay, I don't believe that's what's happening, but let's say it is. Okay. Again, folks, you want to pull out a map here if you're watching on YouTube and go see where there's conflicts like that going all across the planet. If that's what we care about, we'll never get anything done. So again, this is why this is so important. You see, he can say this with a straight face into the cameras. And when you picked up your paper today, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the USA Today, LA Times, Chicago, you go through wherever you get your news. Nobody talking about this. If people like the Great American Mail and others who are being honest with you gave you the news every day, you'd hear about this every day until he shuts his frickin' mouth. But nobody talks about it because they all either they want him to succeed, and so they want to help be part of the cover, or increasingly they don't know any better. They really don't know any better because they're too young to know better.
Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you are paying for the product. Do it now. Do it today. Your customers, the American people, they need relief now.
So this is one of my favorite ones. I've already debunked the price. I've already debunked that they can't set it. I've already debunked that he's trying to blame people. Do it now. Do it now. We're in a time of peril. Well, here's another thing. Riddle me this, Batman. This has never made any sense to me, right? So, okay. So do it now because there's a fake war and the American people are suffering because you caused inflation that's Putin's fault. Okay, so let's just say for the sake of the argument those things weren't doing. Then it'd be okay for them to just hike the price up, which, by the way, they never wanted to do under Obama or Trump. This is the most we've paid for gas in the last 12 years. But all of a sudden now, they've decided to do it. But if they weren't those things, it'd be fine for them to do it. I mean, what in the world? But getting back to Bezos' point, folks, you're not governing when you come to people and you lie to them. You basically need to lead or be honest. If we had an honest press, he would say to you, look, I'm very sorry, but you're going to have to pay more for gas because we are transitioning to green energy. That means that if you want to be non-green, right, then you are going to have to pay more for gas. And by the way, our reaction to the Russian situation is causing it to go up. That is true, and we're going to continue with that, even though Russia is making out like a bandit. I mean, their ruble's worth more. Everything that they said they were going to do has backfired. Russia is doing just fine. But that would be at least honest, okay? And then we could judge whether we want to continue the policy with him.
The companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump. This is a time of war, global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump.
Okay, I've had enough of that. Anyway, I spent way too much time with that. But see, again, this is why we can't get anywhere, because I've literally spent about a third of the show, more than a third of the show, basically debunking these lies. The good news is that Bezos appears to now be calling them out. So maybe we'll be closer to the Washington Post actually doing some journalism for the first time in like 30 years, but we shall see. So, folks, if you're watching us on the YouTube, you can now see this woman here, Joyce Aline. She goes by @JoyceWhiteVance. If you watch MSNBC, which when I go to the gym, unfortunately I do, I see her almost daily. Okay, she is a professor of law at the University of Alabama Law School, which when I applied to law school was a top 25 law school, believe it or not. It's got, looks like almost 915,000 followers, okay? And she is a radical leftist. She's a communist. These types of people have been out there for a long time. They were there when I went to school in the late 80s and early 90s. They were there. But they now have just gotten off their rocker. Okay, and they say things like this. So she's proud of this. So she tweets it out. She's got a Substack article. And it basically starts out with this. The founders wouldn't have gone to the trouble of fighting a revolution and creating a new nation only to have their words twisted so that AR-15s matter more than our children. Some arguments don't deserve a thoughtful ... response ... and should be laughed out of the public square. So she's basically calling for a heckler's veto on the Second Amendment. Now, here's why this is important, why you should care about it. And I'm going to pull up her article. I may read a little bit of it. I think you got the gist. And I've been getting a lot of copyright complaints now that I'm doing the show live on YouTube. And, of course, when I basically write them back and explain that this is fair use, then they lift them. But anyway, so I'm going to have to do less of those things. But at this point, I would have done a Billy Madison. We're now all stupider from having listened to you than we were before we started. Now, but here's why this is important, folks. She can't be bothered to govern, okay? She would have been all for that law we passed, I don't know, a month ago that Biden signed, okay? Didn't do a flipping thing. And we all said it wouldn't do a flipping thing, right? We all told her the facts. We all told her the reality. But she's not interested in reality. She thinks AR-15, she thinks that people who support Second Amendment rights want children to die. Not to mention, by the way, we could go to this, which I did, right? Waukesha was what, 2 months ago? So the Highland massacre this weekend had 8 people dead, 31 injured, okay? 8 people dead, 31 injured. That happened this weekend. Waukesha, 2 months ago, 6 people dead, 62 injured. So twice as many injured and 2 less dead with a car. Both parades, that these two cities are about 80 miles apart. Now, Joyce White-Vance, who's teaching your babies at the University of Alabama School of Law, doesn't seem to understand that even if you got rid of the Second Amendment, even if you went and bought all the guns, right, which they did in Australia, it didn't work, you're still going to have people just running people over in a parade. Or you'll have people somehow get their hands on a stick of dynamite, which somebody did in the summer of 1927 and blew up an entire school. Or they'll just make up a homemade bomb. You see, what she doesn't understand is that you just can't go around and lie to people and demagogue and actually get something done. You actually need people with solutions. And see, but again, here's the problem with these people. Joyce White-Vance, she got no interest in having solutions. She doesn't care about people getting killed. She just wants to be right. Now, based on her age, she looks like she's a little older than me. Maybe she's a little younger, but she's probably in her 50s, my guess. Maybe 60s. Don't know. Don't care. Here's the point, though. She ought to be smart enough to know, but she might not. This is a person who may have like a reasonably decent IQ. If you give this person a number 2 pencil, she probably does pretty well. But she's one of these people that, even though she's intelligent, she's not emotionally stable enough to actually, if you put her in power, to actually do things and get things done, right? But there was a time when somebody like this would have been laughed out of the public arena. The very thing she wants for people like me to happen would have happened to her. It's like, no, we don't dismiss arguments out of hand in the States, right? You actually have to deal with the arguments. And so I could read this article, but now, since we're running a little bit behind, I got a lot of stuff to get to. I'm not going to read the article. You can go check it out yourself if you want. She's at, looks like Joyce Vance, it's spelled just like it would sound, .substack.com. It's the latest article. We don't have to respect dumb. All right? The founding fathers didn't intend this, exclamation point. Right? And again, I've been hearing these leftist arguments ever since I got involved in politics and the law. They never have anything. But no one ever used to dare. In fact, people of her ilk used to say, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death to defend your right to say it. People like her now say, no, we need to shut that up. We need to shut that up. And then her whole paper here, if you read it, doesn't have a single solitary fact, statistic, or anything. It's all just basically people died. I don't like that, so get rid of the guns. It's just nothing to it. Now, a couple other facts. I've already given you a couple, and then I'm going to move on. But I gave you the facts about Waukesha, okay? Well, I want you to give you this other fact. I don't have an article for it, but I wrote it down before I started it. This weekend, setting aside Highland Park, which is about 25 miles away from Chicago, okay? You heard it was 8 and 31, 8 dead, 31 wounded. There were 64 people shot in Chicago, not including this, 11 dead, all right? See, now this is how they do this. We all focus on the mass shooting, which is horrific. It's awful. I don't like any of that. But we ignore the 64 shot and the 11 were dead, right? Now, if I were part of the Democrat establishment, I would want to dig into the fact that the parade people that were shot were all white, and the 64 that were shot and the 11 that died in the rest of Chicago were probably all black. Maybe that's not what we're talking about. I don't know. Then there's also this. I put this in my stack over the weekend. Denmark in shock as gunman kills 3 at Copenhagen shopping mall. So, this is obviously a mass shooting, all right, by a 22-year-old Danish man, right? Now, funny, we're not hearing about this in the media, right, because we're reliably told that this is the only country this happens to. And I looked it up. Denmark has about 5 million people, right? So America is about 65 times its size, right? So you multiply that times 65, we don't have that many mass shootings here. It just goes to show you that mass shootings are not an epidemic, but to the extent they're a problem all across the world. And increasingly, the problem is younger, especially men, who, for whatever reason, don't have a grounding point in their lives, and they are now turning to violence against individuals who have done nothing to them at all, right? This we are seeing. And again, anybody with any common sense, which is why Joyce White Vance, or whatever her name is trying to do the heckler's veto to shut us up, right, is because she has no response to this. So, in other words, she has no response to the fact it's helping other places. She has no response to the fact that people are doing mass criminal things with cars and other things. She has no response to the fact that, obviously, there's something going on here. We have been awash in guns my entire life since 1968. We've been awash in guns since the founding of the country. These people like to talk about muskets, all right? But muskets were pretty quickly replaced, right, with lever-action rifles, right around the Civil War, in fact, right around 1855, 1856, I think the Henry repeating rifle came about. But it didn't get big use until the middle of the Civil War, and the Union Army had the rifle barreling. But it came across pretty quickly, right? And those things proliferated. So people are telling you, like, it's recent. They're lying, right? We've been awash in guns since the very beginning. Not to mention, think about it, folks, a musket or a few people with muskets or people with a knife, they could do a lot of mass damage back in the day if they wanted. They don't these people don't understand this because they're not interested in thinking. They're just interested in hating whatever it is you do. But anyway, so the Denmark thing proves that something else is going on. The other thing that is basically going on, and I want you to understand this, is we're getting to the point now where we need to stop publicizing the name of the shooter. I'm not going to say the name of the shooter, but I know it. And the only reason I know it is because every single solitary person on the planet, as soon as they could, they reported the name. Now, they might have had some excuse. I don't really think you have a good excuse to say, well, we got to tell you his name so we can find him. I don't think so. Criminals are found every day where you live, and nobody knows their names, and you don't need their names to know who they are to be at large. You don't. But now that he's been arrested, there's no need to repeat it. But again, the media doesn't care about that. People like Joyce White Vance, they don't care about that, right? They obviously know that there's a correlation between doing something stupid and illegal, already illegal, with a firearm makes you famous, and maybe it'll get you to get death by cop, but they don't want to acknowledge that. right? So they passed a stupid bill that did nothing, and they've done nothing to address the problem, and they just want to be angry. So to make my point, I could have picked just about anybody, and sadly, folks, I'm not kidding you. I could have picked almost anybody for this experiment, and I may do it again this week. But I just picked this person, at JoJo from Jers. Apparently, she's from New Jersey. She has about 459,000 followers. She's got one of these viral accounts, okay? And she is a rabid Democrat, and she's just insane. I mean, we're going to read a bunch of her tweets, and I want you to understand that this is a typical Democrat voter. This is why Biden talks the way he does. This is why Joyce Vance talks the way she does. These people that they have, they don't intellectualize anything, right? They just emotionalize everything. And so if they're always angry, they're mad, and they're always fighting. I tweeted this out again. My best tweets never go anywhere, So I tweeted out earlier today, we've reached the point where Democrats can no longer be bothered to govern while they're stealing our money, and it's not going to go anywhere. And then I tweet something about something else, and it goes viral. But anyway, it is what it is. So let's go in here. All right, so we're going to start. So here's her pinned tweet, okay? This is, again, typical famous influencer Democrat. This is how they think. Maybe someday women in America will have as many rights as guns do. Now, folks, if you believe that, right, you need probably to be years of psychiatric treatment, okay? Anyway, welcome to finding out portion of fucking around, Rudy and Linz, okay? That's something about Lindsey Graham and Rudy Giuliani have been subpoenaed in the probe for the Trump election scam. Okay, so apparently whatever Fulton County is doing over here about Trump elections, where he said find votes, right? Which we all knew what he meant by find votes was go find the fraudulent votes for Biden, and that'll get me over the hump. But okay, there we go. And sorry about the cursing. I meant to self-beat myself, but I didn't. Sorry. She curses a lot, which is also typical of your average Democrat person. What the F does it say about a country where rapists and AK-47s have more rights than my vagina? Okay, I'm just going to leave that right there. Who agrees the NRA is a effing domestic terrorist organization? Now, folks, if you listen to this podcast, right, and increasingly a lot more of you are, thank you, we debunked that about a month ago. NRA was once a powerful lobby. They are now like number 250, right? Planned Parenthood smacks NRA down left and right as a powerful lobby. Yet she somehow thinks they should be a nonprofit. Now, again, I want you to understand, we're not going to do any July 4th today. We're going to do July 4th tomorrow. But there was a lot of things trending over the weekend, okay? One of them was, I can't remember her name, Jessica Chastain, an actress who, I don't know who she is. Apparently she's famous, but doesn't matter, whatever. She literally tweeted a middle finger to America for July 4th. Okay, right? These people, increasingly, they don't believe in reality, right? They don't believe in elections. They don't believe in the Constitution. But here's the other thing. They don't believe in America. Of course, that kind of goes hand in hand with the Constitution. But anyway, all right. So, again, I could sit here and say, in addition to the NRA, basically, you've already gotten what you want here, JoJo. The NRA is not powerful anymore. It hadn't changed anything, but, anyway. Republicans are afraid of their guns will be taken away while the rest of us are afraid our loved ones will be. Okay, I don't know what that is, but another emotional appeal. All right. Of course, the Highland Park shooter was able to obtain his weapon legally. Is anyone surprised? No, because you can obtain weapons legally in this country. Here's another tweet. It's not the doors. It's not the pot. Not the video games. It's not the porn. It's not there weren't enough good guys with guns. It's the guns. It's the MFing guns. Okay, here it is again with the guns. So is she going to tweet somewhere here anything rational? Like maybe, what about the Waukesha guy with his car? I don't think so. If they can ban books, we can also ban assault rifles. Nobody bans books. The only people that ban books are the left, right? So they'll ban like To Kill a Mockingbird because they don't like the racial stuff in there about Atticus Finch and the person he defended. But if we say, hey, this book with all this sex in it, it's not appropriate in a 3 through 6 school, that's banning books, right? Right? I mean, again, anyway, so I'm going to do a couple more and I'm going to stop. But folks, we've gone through basically a day, not quite a day, but we've gone through a bunch of her tweets, right? Let me go through a few more and just get the idea. A madman shooting a semi-automatic rifle from a rooftop at people watching a 4th of July parade, sure as F, and again she says the word, wasn't what the founding fathers had in mind. Your right to own assault rifles does not supersede my right to go to a parade and not effing get shot, okay? So Republicans will force women and girls to carry babies to term because all life is precious. But a weapon can kill 6 people in a matter of seconds. It's totally cool. How effing twisted. You cannot say you're pro-life if you're pro-assault rifle. Has Ted Cruz blamed the latter yet? Anyway, folks, this is the feed of somebody who is an influence in the Democrat Party. This is who they're going. There's not a single rational thought in here. Everything's just anger and emotion. And then you wonder why Biden can go out there and blame Putin and blame the gas owners, right? And we get nothing done. That's how. The Democrat Party, they're not interested in even bothering to govern anymore, right? Biden isn't doing one single solitary thing to bring down the price of gas, and we all know it, okay? So that leads us to Liz Cheney. A couple things about Liz Cheney came out over the weekend, and the reason I brought Liz Cheney up was, one, because a couple things came out about Liz Cheney. But one of them is she's apparently exploring a 2024 presidential run. Now, this is something that popped up a few years ago, and when it first popped up, people like you and I were like, "What in the? She's not even gonna. I mean, she's gonna be like Jeb Bush. She's gonna spend $100 million to get like 3 delegates. Come on." But I don't know if you know this or not, but I think I've talked about it before. But one of the problems with American politics is we no longer solve problems. We no longer see something that happened and then go in there and say, well, let's kind of correct that. So I'll give you an example. In the 90s, a lot of people, big thing going on back then was they didn't like people getting welfare, and then those people never looked for work. So the Congress came about and they said, hey, you know what? That's not right. Let's if you get welfare, that's fine. Everybody, anybody can have a bad day, anybody can have a bad time, but you need to at least apply for work if you're able-bodied at certain points in order to continue to get the welfare benefits. And so people, got together. Bill Clinton signed it. The Republicans who controlled the Congress and the Senate at that time, and they passed and they got together and they correct the thing, right? You try to fix things as you go along. Anyway, so part of the problem we have out there is that politics, and because people lie about this and say that the people that have the most money are going to win, that has been debunked. That is not true. There is a small correlation, but it's not nearly what you think. And if you don't believe me, go look up and see how much money AOC had when she won that congressional Democrat primary up there in Burlington, right? Or go look at Ilhan Omar, some of these other people. Like, you don't need all the money to do it. It's simply not true, okay? But anyway, they one of the reasons they convince you to that is they want you constantly donating money, right? And there's a reason for that. It's a very simple way of money laundering. I raise a lot of money for a campaign, and then I get to pay it to people that do polls. I get to pay the people that do security. I get to pay the people that cater food. Who do you think those people are? You know who those people are. They're people who are also Democrats. They're also their wealthy friends. So the more money, if the more they convince you that it takes 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, right, to run a successful Senate race, the more money they can then pass on to their friends. Well, one other little problem in the system is this. When you finally retire, and folks, don't take my word for it. Everything I say, go Google it, check it out yourself. But we'll see this. Somebody like Cheney is a perfect example. She's probably not going to win her primary. Now, I haven't really looked at the polls yet because they don't run, I think, until August 14th, so it's quite some time before we're going to find out who wins that primary. But what little I've looked at it, she's got about, she has no chance. So she's probably going to lose. But she is fundraising a lot. She's getting a lot of money people that just for spite, so Democrats for spite are probably sending her money, so she'll continue to go after Trump, all this stuff. But here's the point. Let's say she ends up and she loses her primary, so she's done, right? I guess she could run in the general as an independent and try to win then, but who knows? Let's say she loses the most likely thing is she loses the primary, she doesn't run. Let's say at that time she's got $20 million in her coffers, right? It is perfectly legal. It shouldn't be, but it is perfectly legal for her to form the Cheney Foundation, right? Take that $20 million, put it into that nonprofit Cheney Foundation. It is perfectly legal for her to then go around the country, right, paying her expenses, paying her salary, hire her brother, hire her sister, hire her cousin, hire whoever she wants for, $500,000 a year to be the president or CEO, another $500,000 a year to be the CFO, and you get the idea. That's why she continues to raise money and continues to go out there and do this, right? Another reason is this is something that the left create. We talk about the feedback loop, and we talk about the infrastructure they've built. They've built an infrastructure, and it's a powerful one, where if you're a Democrat and you just continue to do the Democrat thing and just you're somebody in Missouri, what was that woman's name? I can't remember her name. She ended up winning one more term than she would have. She's always on MSNBC. It doesn't matter. You get the point. She became radical, and Missouri went more from Democrat to the Republican, and she wouldn't change with it. It was fine. No big deal, because they've got a system where, okay, don't worry about that. You lose your Senate seat, no big deal. We'll just swing you into academia. You can do that for a while. We'll go get you a job with a politician, or you can go on MSNBC and so forth. So Liz Cheney's out there auditioning for a role somewhere, maybe on Fox, or she's probably could go on CNN and play the token Republican they come on to say, oh yeah, this is not the Republican Party I grew up with. But anyway, she over the weekend had a lot of things to say, and again, this is not a person who is trying to win a Republican primary. I guarantee you that. Anyway, take a listen.
That at this moment, we are confronting a domestic threat that we have never faced before, and that is a former president who is attempting to unravel the foundations of our constitutional republic. And he is aided by...
Now, folks, again, we've written extensively about this on our Substack page, greatamericanmail.substack.com, greatamericanmail.substack.com. Remember, it's M-A-I-L, not M-A-L-E. But, folks, what Trump did was fight tooth and nail right up until January 6th to get what he thought was a fraudulent election righted. That's what he did, okay? He managed, at the end of the day, to have, and again, I'm not blaming him for this, but I'm saying arguably he managed, okay? He managed to get 7 states to send alternate electors. He managed to get people to storm the Capitol for about 4 hours, okay? He managed to hold up the certification progress for about 4 hours, right? He managed to get 8 senators and 138 other representatives to register objections, right? Before they didn't vote on it, but they registered the objections, Arizona, and then everything got shut down. That's all he was able to do. All right, that's it. Now, nothing happened. There was no military coup. Nobody seized anything. Nobody took anything. That's literally what happened. And Liz Cheney is saying that he's a domestic threat now, a year and a half later. Okay? Now, which one do you think is a domestic threat? Somebody who, again, assuming he did all of that, okay, and we've gone through it in excruciating detail on our Substack page. None of that was illegal. None of it, okay? And here's Liz Cheney talking about a danger to the republic. Now, she is a member of a committee who was not appointed by the minority leader, and she knows that. She was appointed by the majority leader, so she's part of the majority. They are operating in secret with no challenge from any other side. They have not shown any of their work. Now, which one do you think is a greater danger to America?
Republican leaders and elected officials who've made themselves willing hostages to this dangerous and irrational man.
All right. So now, not only is Trump a problem, but anybody who even agrees with Trump is a problem, according to Liz Cheney. Okay? She's not just attacking Trump now, folks. Not about Trump. I say that. I've always said that. They're not after Trump. They're after us. Okay? He just happens to be the first one they get to. Sooner or later, they'll get to you too.
As the full picture is coming into view with the January...
There's no full picture coming into view, Liz. What are you talking about? I've seen the full picture. I've written extensively about the full picture. I know exactly everything you say he did, which I don't believe he did all of it, but even assuming he did, there's nothing illegal, nothing improper. Yet, this is Liz Cheney over the weekend talking about this stuff.
6th Committee. It has become clear that the efforts Donald Trump oversaw and engaged in were even more chilling and more threatening than we could have imagined.
And she's going to tell us when she gets around to it with her, not hearings, but presentations. Anyway, I'm not going to let you listen to any more of that, but the main important thing I want you to know is that Liz Cheney is the last thing she is an American or a Republican. Okay, I don't know what she is, but she's basically a fascist and a communist leftist now. But the other important thing to know is it's not just Trump now. She's now deluded herself into believing that it's Trump and anybody else who doesn't share her opinion. That doesn't sound very American to me. So anyway, all right. So Twitter silenced physicians who posted truthful information about COVID, lawsuit alleges. 3 physicians are suing Twitter, alleging the company violated its own terms of service and community standards when it suspended their accounts for posting truthful statements regarding COVID-19. Dr. Robert Malone, Peter McCullough, and Brian Tyson on Monday filed a lawsuit in the Superior Court of California. It's not going anywhere, folks. And again, you should know about this because it should go somewhere, but it won't. I'll update you in a week or two when it's dismissed. But folks, knowing what we know now about big tech, right? And these lawsuits are getting filed and judges are not standing up and going, look, now that I've seen the way big tech's acting, I got to let this lawsuit go through. And I say it all the time. It's not just where you are, it's where you're headed. We're headed in the wrong direction. God bless them for filing the lawsuit, but not going to do any good. Anyway, you now are all caught up to date on the news of the day. And if you like this podcast or live stream as the case may be, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.